thank you all for allowing me to be here today. Hopefully not going to be as doom and gloom as some of the financial conversations we've been having, but it hasn't been easy. Some of you may remember me from the Spring Apartment Report breakfast where we talked about the difficulties and challenges that operators faced during the pandemic. We had painstaking rental assistance, legislative whiplash, and our beloved bad debt reporting. We also spoke about some positives that came out of the pandemic, including collaboration amongst key stakeholders, technology improvements, voices in legislation, and more. What we didn't foresee is the continued impacts we would face regarding employee retention, challenges that vendors are experiencing with supply chain issues or staffing, and the continued negative media impact without input or data from housing providers. In looking at recent media coverage of the rental housing industry, you can see many media outlets have been covering the upcoming rent increase cap of SB 608. These articles discuss the struggles our residents are facing as rental demands are tightened, but many of these articles did not show the data of the impacts the housing providers have been facing as well. There is one article that references Zillow asking rent compared to prior years, but that does not reflect true operating income. Some articles detail the rising cost of inflation and how other industries can relate and pass through their increased pricing to the consumer, whether it's your favorite restaurant, home improvement store, increased costs of groceries, or the pain at the gas pump. Housing providers are also experiencing increased costs and labor shortages, but the narrative spoken for us doesn't include that. In reviewing the data available from CoStar, the table shown is a detailed breakdown of the Portland market average annual cost for operating expenses per unit for the past 3 years, the past 5 years, and in the past 1 full year. Our overall costs in 2021 have increased 3.2% compared to the prior 3-year average and 5% over the prior 5-year average. As you look at this, you can see the largest increases are directly related to insurance, taxes, utilities, R&M, and administrative. When adding in the income per unit on the same format, you can see our income per unit falls in line with our increased expenses per unit, with 3.4% 3-year variance and 5.6% 5-year variance. This base rent is for all units in the Portland market, including those outside of the city of Portland that are restricted with the Portland Relocation Ordinance, and those properties that are exempt from SB 608 being 15 years or newer. The entire Portland market saw a base rent increase of only 3.24% compared to the prior 3 years and 5.47% compared to the prior 5 years. As property operators, we know that the operating expenses are not the only areas that saw increases. Those properties that have capital expenses are also seeing increases in costs, with capital expenditures at 12.1% compared to prior 3 years and 19.4% compared to the prior 5 years. When looking at the bottom line cash flow, overall cash flows only increased less than 1% over the past 3 years and slightly over 1% for the past 5 years. This is the information that is not detailed when the media has a conversation regarding rental increases without housing providers' input. One of the largest drivers of expense increases is the staffing and employee retention crisis that our industry, like so many others, are experiencing. Based on the information from CoStar, payroll was one of the few areas that saw a decrease in overall expenses compared to prior years. However, we know it's not because we're paying our employees less. We've experienced extreme staffing shortages, difficulty in hiring, recruiting, and a sharp increase in competitive wages and benefits. As operators, it is not only us that have experienced extreme staffing shortages, but also our vendor partners, which can create project delays, cost increases for overtime pay, shipment and supply chain disruptions, and more. The challenges our vendors are experiencing are affecting operations with a decrease in customer experience, with delay in amenity usage, capital project completions, general repair and maintenance during unit turnover, and service requests. Speaking with Chantel Campbell from Apartment Advantage, staffing agencies are also feeling the burden of the employee shortage. We're seeing an increase in temporary workers leveraging the market conditions and not settling for just any open position. The same is with our recruiting efforts as well. They're looking for more flexibility in their work-life balance and not accepting offers if it doesn't meet their needs at home. We're seeing additional challenges in staffing for downtown positions, citing concerns over safety and security. Staffing needs are at an all-time high, and no amount of hiring bonuses or increase in wages are alleviating that burden. We're noticing that more employees are looking at companies and how they complement their lives outside of work. They're looking for companies with DEI initiatives, support for mental health and burnout, crisis management and de-escalation policies, and finding companies that connect with their personal lives as well as their professional. What previously was seen as normal work inconveniences seems to be in overdrive now, with more residents at home and more stress from outside factors causing extreme reactions that previously would not have happened. The safety and security our teams are facing is felt amongst our courtesy patrol vendors as well, with more need for on-site security, but difficulty in hiring with staffing shortages and turnover. Factor that in with shortages and delayed response time experienced with local police departments, and our teams are feeling more pressure from residents to create a positive living experience and expressing concerns over their personal safety while at work. Our employees are looking at us to provide them a safe, comfortable, supportive work environment and the flexibility to allow for a positive work-life balance and time with family and friends. Our maintenance teams are seeing the pressure with staffing vacancy, with unit turnover times delayed, service requests pending, and overall workload increased. Our maintenance teams have transferable skills to other industries, so hiring and recruiting process isn't just compared to other multifamily operators, but similar job roles in other industries as well. So how do we overcome this staffing crisis? How do we retain our top talent and recruit from other industries? Many companies are looking internally to review their operations and policies. Some are completing employee engagement surveys. Others are reviewing salaries and benefits compared to market. Lastly, our operating partners are looking at how can we support our on-site teams better, and what tools do they need to be successful. So where do we go from here? The upcoming election and legislative long session in 2023 have the potential to make drastic policy changes yet again to our operations, with more focus on housing needs and renter protections anticipated. Our voices in legislation need to be heard, and involvement from all levels is important for understanding the implications that poor policy has on the end user. If additional restrictions are to be anticipated, then streamlining our expenses and finding economically conservative solutions will be required. Reviewing internal operations will be needed to help support our on-site teams to alleviate the burden that staffing vacancies cause, and will help to minimize the impact of expenses for third-party coverage of on-site duties. While we don't have all the answers, and the uncertainty of the market makes it difficult to predict what changes need to be made to prepare, continual internal review processes, implementing various initiatives to improve the employee and operating experience, and effective change management are a few steps we can take to minimize the impact the pandemic continues to have on our industry. Multifamily operators are resilient, and as we continue to improve to be better than we were yesterday, we will achieve our goals to provide a better work experience for our employees and a better living experience for our residents. Thank you.